One of the most important questions in any story that involves any type of exodus from one place to another is why? And from the extract available, we understand this story of exodus follows a predicted path. It wasn't aliens or new technology that we discovered that inspired or pushed us to move. It was simply necessity. Necessity to negate or escape the consequences of our own incompetence. The extract from the Tiny Blue Marble speaks about global warming and human intervention as the main cause of the planet's destruction. So there's no denying or second guessing what's happening here. The blame is fully on humanity. And another extract then speaks to how nations are in turmoil as corporations and countries fight for the last scrap of resources. A predicted outcome when survival is at stake. Now I'm going to hone in on the term nations here, as it shows the problems at hand weren't just at the ground level but on a larger scale. And if that's the case, it's easy to see how that could potentially lead to civil unrest and war. A lack of trust could have been seeped into allies, with allegiances such as the United Nations or European Union dissolving as everyone fends for themselves to grab the last scrap of resources. So one could point to the growth of isolationist extremist groups across the globe, offsetting the political and social structure of a society. Alternatively, the bond here could actually have grown stronger. That hostility could have been projected outwards towards multiple groups instead. Now, I'm not alleging any wars prior to Exodus, but it's reasonable to come to some type of conclusion that the world might be in a Cold War-like state, similar to what happened between the United States and the Soviet Union back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. In fact, I don't think the government are necessarily the only ones calling the shots. Next up, corporations. The other point to note here is the use of the word corporations or powerful organizations, which likely means they have more significant control over governments and resources than in our current timeline. There's no denying that the richest companies in the world sway governments in some shape or form, so it's easy to say that in a resource-limited Earth, the individuals or CEOs that control said resources would rise to the top due to their ability to bargain and pit governmental bodies against each other. So to be clear, I'm not trying to say everything that happened pre-Exodus was Cyberpunk 2077, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were somewhere in between, and I think there's enough evidence to suggest that with the next point, which is people. In the Blue Marble extract, a teacher from the 21st century shares her concerns, worries, and optimism at the situation at hand. The world is a mess, but she still finds time to take a class on a field trip to the woods on the outskirts of town. Here, the children are able to plant trees in honor of Earth Day, a celebratory day, I imagine, that has come about due to the realization of what humanity has done to the tiny blue marble. She mentions how the children enjoyed being outside and how they were lucky their pollution levels were low, so the kids with asthma didn't need their breathers. This not only points to a society where being outdoors is potentially toxic, but a society that has potentially failed to provide adequate care and medical support to its most vulnerable people, and more importantly, their future. Now, how have I come to this conclusion? I've come to this conclusion because in the book Archimedes' Engine, Josiah is an Earthling who commands massive amounts of wealth that he has used to genetically modify himself. Modifications which we know have been occurring due to human intervention, again, with the awakened species on Earth. Which begs the question, why not the children? The answer is simple, because more than likely the economic output just really wasn't there. An awakened domesticated pig holds so much more potential than a vulnerable group that's currently sapping resources. So while the children or the future of the planet struggle, everyone else suffers. This highlights the wider wealth disparity and power between the rich, the common man, and the poor. In fact, there's a term used for these oligarch-minded people, and I believe they were dubbed technocrats in the Exodus book, but I'm not too sure on that point. Now, further evidence is shown in the extract 99% Workable, where Jürgen Barendaum prioritizes his pleasures and admiration over anyone else's life, knowing fully well the workers below him are the ones carrying the weight of his success. But let's focus back on the teacher from the 21st century. Upon reading this, I got the impression there is an acceptance that nothing can be done, that the impending doom will occur regardless of her views. However, she remains hopeful, which you can interpret as a form of denial or optimism, as she has presented no viable solution. This, I believe, hints that while not all society is fully on board, there is some realization that this is happening and no other options exist. But few things to take away here. Point 1. Humanity has already begun genetically modifying, so this is embedded within the culture. Point 2. Technocrats, or people who have the best economic output, get favorability. Point 3. Humanity is unable to self-correct. Point 4. We as a group think short-term as opposed to